Hi everyone, this is Melissa with Imagine Crafts, and today I'm going to share with you this pine forest card that I made using my Memento dual markers. I start with a piece of watercolor paper that's cut 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And I'm also going to be using this clear stamp set from Penny Black called Woodland Beauty, and specifically I'm going to be using the pine tree that comes with the set. I'm going to be using Greenhouse Memento Marker set, and in this comes Cottage Ivy, Bamboo Leaves, Pear Tart, and New Sprout colors. Although the color doesn't really matter, you can use any Memento green markers that you have. What I'm going to do is use the brush tip of the marker, and I'm also going to use a variety of colors when I stamp the image. So you can see me inking up the stamp with the marker, and I'm going to take a small water spritzer and spritz a little bit of water onto the stamp. After I add my water, I'm going to go ahead and push the stamp into the watercolor paper using the acrylic block, and I'm actually going to hold it there for a few seconds so that that color really sucks into the paper. Now, I don't add a lot of water to my stamp. I only added 1 or 2 spritzes, just enough to kind of cover the whole stamp. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about technique. I'm going to speed up the video why I do this, but there are a few things that I think are important to remember when you do this technique with your memento markers. One is that you want to color the entire stamp, and two is it's okay to use a variety of amounts of water. So if you want a very detailed tree, you'll color in the stamp as you see me doing, and you'll only add 1 or 2 spritzes of water. That gives you a very detailed tree. And what I mean is it's not kind of fuzzy like you see the second tree that I stamped is. Now, if you want something that's a little bit more fuzzy, then what you want to do is you want to add a little more water to your stamp, maybe 3 or 4 spritzes. You do want something that puts a nice fine mist. You don't want big droplets because then you'll get big kind of odd places within your pine trees. Now, you might ask yourself, well, why would you want a variety of trees, some that are kind of fuzzy and some that are more detailed? And here's why. When you create something like this, like a scenic background to a card, anything that's highly detailed are going to be trees that are close to you. Anything that's fuzzy and has kind of a lighter shade to it are going to be trees that are in the distance. And that's great because when you look at a landscape, you're often going to see trees that are in the distance and trees that are close to you. So the way to get this kind of variation in distance is add more water. More water will give you more water on your watercolor paper, which you can then use the paper towel to suck up, and it gives you kind of a lighter, fuzzier tree that looks like it's further away. For a tree that's close, you only add 1 or 2 spritzes of water and then stamp into your paper, and there's nothing to suck up with the paper towel. So you can see I get a really nice kind of variation in the distance of the trees and the detail of the trees. Now I'm going to go ahead and use my heat tool to dry this entirely because I do want to do some embossing on this card and you don't want a wet surface. I'm going to use a stamp set called Hand Lettered Winter Wishes from Simon Says, and I'm going to use a thanks sentiment. I'm going to use some powder to make sure that I don't get embossing powder stuck all over my paper, and then I'm going to ink up this stamp with the Versamark ink for embossing, and I'm going to really push hard on that stamp so that I can get a very good impression because this is watercolor paper. I'm going to take clear embossing powder, and then I'm going to go ahead and heat set this. One of the things I like to do is have a little dry paintbrush on hand to scrape off any stray pieces, and then I'll heat set it. Now that I have a dry surface with a clear embossed thanks that you can't see right now, I'm going to take 4 more memento markers, Lilac Posies, which is the pink here you see, Tuxedo Black. I'm also going to be using a Danube Blue and a Grape Jelly, which is the purple. And I'm going to take a watercolor brush and simply add some of this color to my watercolor paper with the water brush, and I'm going to make a sky. The great thing about these memento markers is that I can go over the trees with this black and purple and blue ink, and I'm not going to mess up the trees that are already stamped there because they've been heat set. And now I want to take my paper towel and wipe off the thanks sentiment because there was some ink on top of it. And then I'm going to go ahead and dry the whole creation so that I can add a few details to this card. Now, this is another great thing about the Memento markers is now that I've got this creation done, I want to go in and add some tree branches and a bit more detail to the card. So you can see I'm taking the bullet tip of the marker and simply sketching in a few tree trunks here and there so you get a really realistic view of the trees. And then what I'm going to do is take one of the green markers, in this case I'm taking the cottage ivy, and simply going in and putting a few little details into the tree, which you'll see at the end when I show you the close-up of the card. But this really brings your creation to life and makes those trees look more real. Okay, now I'm going to add some stars to the sky by using my Irresistible Pico Embellisher from Imagine Crafts, and I'm going to be using the color Wedding Dress as well as Gold. And I'm simply going to shake these up really well, and then I'll add a few stars to the night sky. Okay, and now I'm going to set that to the side so that Pico Embellisher can dry. And I'm going to go ahead and stamp the second part of my sentiment onto Kraft cardstock using Versamark ink and some white embossing powder. And that will pretty much complete all of the components to the card. The last thing I want to do is adhere the watercolor paper to some green cardstock, and I'm going to do so with tear it tape. Tear it tape is great because it's super adhesive, and if you have any warping on your paper due to the watercoloring, it really helps to lay that paper down nice and flat so you don't see the warping on your card. Now that completes today's project. I hope you enjoyed this brief tutorial on how to use your Memento markers for stamping and that you can create your own watercolored background using this method. Join us again on Imagine for more tutorials soon.